What is up, everybody? Welcome to another video from the Geek Pantheon, and today I want to talk to you about campaign planning. Now, I'm not talking about sitting down with your notebook and writing out session 1, session 2, session 3, identifying exactly what the name of the big bad evil is, all that kind of stuff. I'm talking about campaign planning before session 0. The things that you need to figure out before you go to your players and say, here's the type of campaign that we're going to be doing. Here's the type of story that I want to tell. Let's create characters for you that are going to fit. You don't need to do everything before session 0. In fact, you shouldn't. I'm going to heartily recommend not doing that because it takes the players out of the equation. And we will do a campaign planning video post session 0 a little bit later. But today I wanted to talk to you about your pre-session 0 planning and what you should have prepared when your players come to you ready to start building characters. But before we get into that, if you want to be part of the conversation surrounding this video, head to our Facebook group, The Geek Pantheon. We are also on Twitter and Instagram at The Geek Pantheon. And we have a Patreon, patreon.com/thegeekpantheon. It's a super fun community with lots of great people who would love to have you there. We talk about D&D, movies, books, a lot of Lord of the Rings chatter. We would love to have you over there. So patreon.com/thegeekpantheon. But anyway, on to the video. So point number 1, when you're doing your pre-session 0 planning, is to define your tone. And what I mean by that is, are you going for fun, gritty, epic, realistic, or high fantasy? These are questions that you need to think top of mind about before you get into the rest, because this decision will define everything else. For example, campaign 2 of Eberron Renewed, I'll put a link down in the description. It's our actual play podcast. I made the decision early on that I wanted it to be a street level type of campaign, not hopping different planes, not doing any crazy stuff. Street level, not gritty. Think season 1 of Star Wars Rebels, where they still do it with a wink and a smile. They're having a good time, but there are some very real things going on, and there's things that they need to deal with in their community. So that's the tone that I kind of wanted to go with. And once I had that defined, I could go on to step 2, which was define your theme. Now, what this means is, what type of story are you wanting to tell? Good versus evil, nature versus civilization? What core conflict are you going for? Because once again, we're working our way down a list here of the things that need to be defined before the next thing can be defined. And you could have a really fun, zany, good versus evil story. That's totally possible. Most kids' movies are good versus evil, but they're fun, wacky, zany. You could also have a gritty good versus evil story. It's possible to do any kind of theme within any kind of tone. You just need to have those things defined as you're working your way down, because the previous decision will kind of inform the next one. For my example, I knew I wanted to do a street level, intimate type of campaign, so nature versus civilization wasn't really going to work for me. I could eliminate that based on the answer to my previous question. Now, the next point that you're at, once you have your tone and your theme defined, is identifying your genre. And this one's kind of the fun one for me. I really enjoy looking at different types of stories and deciding where mine is going to fit. Because you could identify your campaign as being medieval era, low magic in tone, and with your theme, it's about the role of this really powerful magical artifact in the world and how the people around it are affected by it and their desire to get to it. But then once you get to your genre, if you pick epic fantasy, you have Lord of the Rings. If you pick comedy, you have Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Those first 2 questions fit for either, but the genre becomes very important. So, looking at different genres like epic fantasy, noir thriller, grim dark, war drama, all of these things are totally viable for a D&D campaign, but your players need to know before they make a character. They need to know what type of character is going to fit in the type of story that you're telling. Because you don't want to be playing Aragorn in Monty Python and the Holy Grail. It doesn't work. The next point is, what's important to you for this campaign? As the dungeon master, so many times we put on our self-sacrificing hat and it's like, I'm running this for the players and it's about their experience and I'm just here to facilitate their story. No, stop it. You are a player too. You are here to have fun. You are here to engage with the game. So stop only thinking about what you're going to bring to the table for the players to engage with, and think about yourself. What do you want to play? Do you want to have a super compelling villain that you can chew scenery with and cackle maniacally as the party enters your lair? Do you want to have NPC allies play a big role in the campaign and grow to where the party really cares about these NPC allies and wants to protect them? Or you wanted to run the type of game where the party should be concerned about dying at any moment? looking over their shoulder, constantly checking for traps? Is that the type of game that you want to play? You need to communicate that to the party, because if I'm coming to the table thinking that we're going to play Monty Python and the Holy Grail, and it turns out we're playing Dark Souls, I'm going to have a bad time. So figure that out so you can present it to the party at session 0 and say, okay, everyone, here's what I'm looking to do with this campaign. I want to have you all be this group of adventurers, but I'm going to be running a handful of NPC allies that go with you, and I would really like them to feel like they're part of the party and feel important. That's something that I would really like. And hopefully your players will hear that and treat the NPCs on the same level as the rest of the party members. Your mileage may vary a little bit on that from player to player, but hopefully if you communicate it clearly, you'll get that. Or if you tell them, I'm going to be running a villain that's constantly reoccurring throughout the campaign and growing in power alongside you all, and it's going to be really fun and interesting. Because this speaks to a problem, in addition to the self-sacrificing noble DM complex that a lot of us have, we oftentimes treat our parties like our audiences as dungeon masters, and we don't want to spoil anything for them. We don't want to let them know that the villain is going to be reoccurring, that it's going to come out back and they're going to grow with power alongside the party. We want them to be surprised by that, which I get it. I've done twists in my campaigns also, and I understand that impulse, but at the same time, if it's something really important to you and something you really want to happen, you need to communicate that to your players. You need to communicate that at the table, because like I said at the beginning of this point, it's your game too, and you deserve to have fun. And so if you're really wanting to have these NPC allies mean a lot to the party, and you don't communicate that, you're going to be resentful when they don't treat the NPCs as valuable as the PCs, because that's just their natural default. That's what every D&D party does, unless you communicate it to them. So anyway, communicate with your party, let them know what you want out of the game at session 0. But before you do that, you need to define that and ask yourself, what fun do you want to have at the table? The next point is identifying your villain archetypes. Mastermind pulling the strings, frontline general that wants to have the highest body count in the army. You need to identify what types of villains the party is going to be going up against, because that's also important and will largely define the type of characters and the type of skills that your party is going to take. If they know that they're going to be going up against vicious warlords with giant axes that are going to be swinging for their heads, they're going to know, okay, maybe I need to make a fighter, or at least somebody that can withstand a punch. And the last point for your pre-session 0 campaign planning is what skill sets will shine in this campaign. If you're wanting to run a campaign similar to what I'm doing for campaign 2 of Eberron Renewed, where it's this street level criminal underworld type thing, probably creating a paladin that's constantly on their mount is not the best idea for this type of campaign, both from a paladins want to be lawful thing, and also you have to go into buildings a lot and horses are too big. So letting the players know these are the types of skill sets that are really going to be afforded the chance to shine in this campaign. Intelligent characters that can look at different situations and put the pieces together. Somebody that can take a punch and throw a punch, but not necessarily blow up a building with fireball. Things like that will really help your players in creating their characters and make them feel like they are just as much part of the story as you are. And that, for me anyway, as a Dungeon Master, is the end goal. Because you may have noticed, I just got to my last point of campaign planning, and not once did I mention writing out the session, naming the villain, statting out the villain, writing a story, identifying lieutenants, creating the NPC allies. I didn't do any of that stuff because you need your party's buy-in at session 0 so you can take their characters away from session 0 and then start building things. Start looking at their characters' wants, needs, desires, people from their past, people that are currently their allies, and start building from there. That's when you start actually putting the bricks in place to build your campaign. You lay the foundation before session 0, so that then the party can let you know what type of materials you need to use, just to continue this labored metaphor. If before session 0, forget that. If before the start of your campaign, if before session 1, you have planned out the next 10 sessions of your campaign, you have planned 9 too many sessions, in my opinion, the way I run my games. I like my players to have just as much agency in the story as me. And so by planning a session at a time, I am able to react and adapt based on the things that are important to them. A great tool to use, this isn't even like a helpful tips for campaign management video, but a great tool to use is to ask your players to recap what happened last time. What happened at the last session, rather than you telling them, okay, here's what happened last time, everybody. Let them do it, because then you'll hear what they remember, what they care about. And you'll hear people chiming in like, oh, don't forget that this thing happened. And you know, that mattered a lot more to that player than that player. And you get to get a sense of what threads you need to start pulling on for each character by what they're remembering and talking about and seeming really excited about. So yeah, those are my 6 tips for planning your campaign before session 0. Things you should do to lay the foundation for your campaign that will give it the most legs to go the distance to run a really interesting, compelling, and fulfilling story without having to waste your time pre-plotting the next 20 sessions only for the party to go off the rails after session 1. So let me know what you thought. Did I miss anything? Are there any tips that you have for pre-session 0 planning that you want to share? Let me know down in the comments below, and be sure to like this video if you enjoyed it and found it helpful, and subscribe to the channel if you want to see other videos like this. And lastly, the best place to discuss this episode and all the other videos are in our Discord. You can find the link to our Discord on our Facebook group or on our website, thegeekpantheon.com, or on our Patreon, patreon.com/thegeekpantheon. As soon as you become a patron, you get a link to the Discord sent straight to you, and you're ready to go talking about D&D with all of our other amazing patrons. Anyway, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.